All right, welcome back, Anchor Leg listeners, to another episode of the Anchor Leg podcast. I'm your host, Griffin Gushman, joined by my co-hosts.
Josh Hernandez.
Jaden Wyatt.
And Peter Mang.
And we've got a very special guest today from Washington and Lee. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Dalton.
I'm Dalton Jobe. I obviously swim on the Washington and Lee swimming team, and I'm a current sophomore here.
Well, we're glad to have you, Dalton. First of all, let's just jump into your NCAA experience this year. I mean, last year you went as an IMer mostly, and this year we saw you earn All-American honors in the 200 free individually, which is quite the pivot there, and as well as compete on some pretty high placing relays for Washington and Lee. So tell us what that experience was like.
Yeah. So my first experience at NCAAs as a freshman, kind of went there, didn't really know what to expect, had a great experience and all, but didn't do super well. I think I placed like 13th in my 400 IM and barely missed finals in the 2 IM. Um, and then my sophomore year, NCAAs was definitely a lot better and definitely made that improvement that I was looking for in my swimming. And like you mentioned, I am an IMer, but I also do a lot of freestyle. So coming into this NCAAs, I had to make the decision to either do the 2 free or the 4 IM, and I mainly focused on the 2 free, which I was very happy about. And I was able to get that top 8, like you said, and that was definitely something that I wanted to do this season, but I didn't set any like high expectations and I didn't put the pressure on myself. Um, so if I did fall short of that, I wouldn't be upset with my season. Going on top of that, we had some pretty good relays. I think we got 12th in the 4 free and then 13th in the 8 free relay, but those were definitely far below what we wanted to do at this meet. That being said, like I mentioned earlier, it's hard going to your first NCAAs as a swimmer. And this was my second NCAAs, but for all the other kids on my relays, it was their first time going to NCAAs. So it was definitely a new experience for them, and a different pace of a swim meet for them. So we didn't do as well as we wanted to, but still finishing top 16, I got to be somewhat happy with that. So
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we can sort of circle back to that comment about the relays and your guys that being their first NCAA championships. Talk to me about those relays. I mean, specifically at ODAC. I think that I kind of speak for everybody on this podcast when I say we were pretty surprised to see that 6:33 at ODACs that put you in the conversation of like maybe contending for an 800 free relay title. I mean, obviously didn't happen this year, but I mean, like that was a great way to end your season, and I assume you're looking to build on that next year.
yes, for sure. So actually, the day we traveled to the ODAC Championships, we were sitting in a Panera. It was the 4 of us boys, me, Luke Nagel, Charles Byers, and Thomas Denton. And we were with our coach. And we were like, Coach, what do we have to do to make it back or make it to NCAAs this year in the 8 free relay? And she was like, I think y'all will have to go under 3 or 6:38. And to us, when she said that, we were like, wow, that's fast. We don't think we can do that. Um, and then fast forward a day later, when we actually swam the race, we blew past her expectations and our own and got that 6:33. None of us really expected that time. So it's really, really, really surprising to us and definitely kind of made our meet on that first day. Going on top of that, going into NCAAs, I feel like we had a little bit too much, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe like we thought too much of ourselves going into NCAAs. We kind of let that time predetermine how we thought the meet was going to go. We thought we were just going to, again, drop more time at NCAAs and blow everyone out of the water with that 6:33. We didn't really realize that it's extremely hard to drop time at NCAAs. So we didn't have as good of a race at NCAAs. We still did well, still got that 13th place. But I think it was a learning experience for all of us on that relay, um, kind of helping us to understand that it's hard to swim fast, both at your conference championships and at NCAAs. and that you can't get too far ahead of yourself, because every race is hard and it's going to be competitive. So I guess moving forward, this next season, we'll definitely build off that and learn from, I guess it was kind of a mistake, getting too confident in ourselves, thinking that we're too good. Um, but I think next year, all of us will have gone to NCAA, so we'll definitely be familiar with the situation and definitely, hopefully, improve on that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've kind of heard a lot, especially from Peter and John, who we've had on help us out on an interview before, that kind of the first NCAA jitters is something that we see a lot, and it's kind of something you have to learn from, and you have to go through the ringer once until you can really figure out kind of the double taper situation between conference and, tapering down again a month later to compete the same events. I think we find that a lot of the people who are there for the first time, are just a little bit off or aren't quite ready, and it's something you kind of have to learn to do twice.
Yeah, I feel like also the taper part's hard, but also the mental part about it, where you're swimming for an extra month, especially for those kids that didn't expect to make it. Like myself, I was confident I would make it, not sure, but I expected to swim that extra month after conference. Whereas some of the kids didn't even expect to swim that extra month. So it's hard on them mentally, staying in the water and training and just having to extend your season an extra month or 6 weeks. So that's another part that I feel like people don't expect to be hard, but is actually really challenging.
Yeah, 100%. That makes a lot of sense. I'm really curious, we've been talking a lot about like the last few weeks here. Going forward, we're unique in D3 that we have this this dead period where, training looks a little bit different. Is there anything you're focusing on in this off season, or things that you're looking to improve? Walk me through what you want your off season to look like.
Hmm. The next 2, 3 months before summer, I'm mainly going to focus on putting some size on me. That's something I've struggled throughout my entire swim career. I always tell myself, oh, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get big, but it never really happens. I put on a few pounds here and there, but I haven't really gotten the size that I've wanted to. And I feel like the next step in my career, in my swimming career, is to get that size on me so I can compete at a higher level and hopefully drop a significant amount of time. And then come summer, come May, June, I'll go back to my hometown, Richmond, and I'll train with my club team, Nova. So I'll get some really good training there, which will hopefully set me up really well for September and the beginning of the season at W&L. So that's kind of my plan. I'm still definitely going to stay in the water the next 2, 3 months, um, but mainly just focusing on getting that size and critiquing technique where that needs to be done. Because you really can't focus on technique any other time of the season besides the off season. So.
Yeah, I think that's like a common thing that we have in D3 based on everyone else we've asked is just like, hey, what are you doing in the off season? They say, oh, I've just been hitting the gym. And we've seen people who've just used that strategy and come back into the season looking very strong. I think that's also something I'm trying to look forward to doing myself as well. I think that's probably one of my biggest areas of opportunity is just like physical strength.
Mhm. You definitely hear a lot of swimmers say, "Oh, this is my season to get big. I'm going to get big." But actually taking the time and dedicating the time and being consistent with what you do is so hard. And I feel like it's so easy to say you're going to get big and lift, and it's easy to go to the gym and lift, but it's just really hard to be consistent and actually put on that size that a lot of us say we want to put on. So it'll be a challenge for sure. It's not going to be easy. And balancing, again, staying in the water and school and everything else, it will be challenging to actually go to the gym and put on the weight that I claim to put on or want to put on.
Yeah, and to kind of, talk about something you briefly mentioned. I know you said you swim for Nova and are from Virginia. So what kind of role did that play in you deciding to go to Washington and Lee? Because I think when we think about a lot of these like powerhouse D3 programs, Washington and Lee is definitely one that flies under the radar. And I think people don't really recognize there's a lot of talent on that roster. We go through and we're swim nerds, so we look at everything. So it's definitely kind of not one of the first schools you think of, but what kind of brought your attention to that?
Growing up in Richmond and swimming at Nova, the coaches really pushed for D1 or bust. They wanted all the swimmers to swim at a high Division I school. And if you weren't the best at the club, they still wanted you to go to maybe a mid-major Division I school. But growing up and having an older brother that swam in high school but not college, I kind of realized that Division I swimming wasn't for me, as I didn't want it to consume my entire life, but I really enjoyed swimming and I wanted to continue swimming. And then being from Richmond and having Washington and Lee in Virginia, I was familiar with the campus and the school, um, and didn't really want to go here until my senior year, where I contacted the coach because I was scrambling to find somewhere to swim. I didn't really know where I wanted to swim or if I even wanted to swim. Um, but I contacted W&L and the coaches were super friendly to me. I took a visit up here and I just really love the campus and the culture here. And being 2 hours from home, that's something that I also really enjoyed about the school. And then going off what you said, that we have a lot of talent here. I feel like we do have a lot of great swimmers that come through here. But I feel like what our program is doing now that it hasn't done throughout, I guess, the past 5, 10, 20 years is we're developing the swimmers better than we ever have. And I don't know if that's due to the coaching and the change in practices, or if it's just due to the culture that we developed since I've been here. But there's definitely a notable change in how our swimmers are progressing here. Because we do have a good amount of talented swimmers that come here, but I feel like in the past 2, 3 years, the swimmers here have noticeably gotten better. And that's something that I'm really proud of about this program. And just like developing the swimmers that we get here is something about this program that I really love and something that I look forward to every year coming back to swimming here.
You mentioned you like figured that you thought Division I swimming wasn't really for you. Like what made you choose Division III over Division I? Like what exactly was it besides just like, Division I being a much bigger commitment? Was there another reason?
hmm Yeah, going off of that, I wanted to go to a Division I school when I was little, but only a Power 5 school, maybe UVA, UNC, Texas, the big name schools. I didn't want to go to a Division I school just to swim. I wanted to be one of the faster kids on the swim team. Because growing up, I was always towards the top of my group, top of my age group in my club. So I wanted to be one of the faster kids in my team, which is kind of why I moved towards Division III, so I could be the big fish in the small pond rather than just a small fish in the big pond, rather than just be a nobody on a Division I team. And I feel like coming here to Division III school where I am the best, it's pushed me more to get better as I'm not really flying under the radar and just going through the motions.
I think
Yeah.
there's like a benefit to both. I mean, like here at Case, like I feel like yeah, I'm being pushed like from behind. Like Griffin's always chasing me during practices. It's, sometimes scares me a little bit. But like, when I go back to my club team over the summer and there's just all the kids who are coming back and they're like just way better than me, I feel like it's also a benefit to, chasing someone else, right?
Mhm.
I think being able to like have like both of those at once is probably like the best, at least for me. I think, sometimes having one or the other is, you know, can be limiting as you say, but it's definitely nice that you figured out like which one you preferred and that's what you went for.
Yeah, going on top of that, I definitely have a lot of high school friends that do swim at the Division I level. And like you said, I check their times, check to see how they're doing, and they push me to be better, even though I don't surround myself around them. I still want to be as good as them, to kind of prove that, hey, I can do this at a Division III school. I don't have to go to a Division I school to be a fast swimmer.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Touching a little bit more on D3, something that I wanted to highlight because we like to talk about, athletes' experience outside of, just swimming, and you mentioned that being a factor for your decision to go D3. Um, you know, tell the listeners, people always love to hear about athletes outside of the pool. Tell me, how do you spend the rest of your day when you're not in the pool training?
Pretty recently, I'm in a intramural basketball league. So I've been playing a little basketball, touching up on my basketball skills. I actually have a game tomorrow. Um, and my team is consisted of everyone in my fraternity. So one nice thing about W&L is that, or being on the W&L swim team, is that you can join any fraternity or sorority that you wish. And sororities and fraternities definitely have kind of a misconception that they're all just crazy party kids that don't care about anything. Um, but here at W&L, I really appreciate that every fraternity is different and there's a different group of kids um, basically in every fraternity, and you can find your place pretty much in any fraternity here. Um, so I kind of have that group of friends that I'm able to hang out with outside of the swim team. So I've been hanging out with more people, I guess, because I'm not consumed with so much practice. So I've definitely enjoyed just hanging out and chilling on the couch, watching March Madness, watching sports, and also trying out a few other sports other than swimming, like basketball.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because that's one of the biggest things that like when like we get recruits over here and they ask me like, hey, like what are some tips and advice you have for like coming to college? And I'm like, when you get here and you're on the swim team, like make sure you find friends outside of the swim team because you don't want your entire swim like friend circle to be just swimmers. I think it's very, very healthy to have have like, connections outside and to be able to extend like what you're doing, right?
To add on that, during swim season, like after I come home from like a hard practice or a swim set, or after coming home from being surrounded by a bunch of swimmers, I actually live in the fraternity house. So I come home to other kids that are not on the swim team. So having that balance of hanging out with kids on the swim team and then coming home to kids that some kids are on the baseball team, tennis team, golf team in my fraternity. And then obviously some of the kids are NARPs, but just coming home to different kids that aren't on the swim team and kind of stepping away from the swimming pool, I feel like really actually adds a lot to my swimming and like staying motivated, and it definitely is a good balance to have here at W&L.
I gotta ask, what frat are you in?
I'm in Phi Kappa Psi. So our frat has a lot of swimmers. I'd say like 30% swimmers. Then we have a good amount of baseball kids, so probably another 30% baseball kids. We have a few tennis kids, a few golf kids, a few wrestlers, and then some NARPs. So it's a good balance of kids. And when I first joined, I kind of was like, how do swimmers and baseball kids get along? Because those are two groups of kids that usually you wouldn't feel like are that good of friends, but all the baseball kids are awesome to hang around, and it's just nice having kids other than swimmers um, to kind of hang out with. But that being said, there are a lot of swimmers in my fraternity, and I definitely enjoy being around them too. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really glad that you were able to find that group of people. It sounds like you have a really good group of friends on the swim team. That's also good that you're able to have that as well. Um, Tell us about your experiences with school at W&L. Like, what do you study? Has that been what you always plan to study, or is that new? I mean, we like to, we'll talk about a lot of swimming as well, but it's nice to sort of see the other side of athletes as well.
yeah, definitely growing up in high school, I was a big math guy, but I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I went to a private school. I went to collegiate school in Richmond, and I guess they always used to say that they would prepare us really well for college. And although they did prepare me well for W&L, the work here is still really difficult, and you definitely have to manage my time well here. I am an accounting major here with a minor in data science, so I do still deal with a lot of numbers, and I enjoy numbers and math and problem solving. Uh, but I just really found a love for accounting when I came here. I didn't really know what it was before I came here. But I took accounting 100, really enjoyed it. So I've just stuck along with accounting and then just adding that data science onto that.
No way, man. It's literally same experience was always math. came here. Math was whatever, and I'm an accounting major as well. So that's super cool to
Awesome.
hear.
There we go.
We've got quite a few other people on here that study business as well, and then Josh is the odd man out in engineering. But cool. I'm glad I could.
He's a civil engineer though, so it's like the same as business. It's not as hard. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's not as hard as like real engineering. So yeah, Dalton, I guess what we talked about this earlier, how I guess everybody says they lift in the off season or whatever, but I guess last off season you kind of took a big jump coming in at the beginning of this year, especially in your 200 freestyle, obviously. I mean, I think that's where we would all say you've seen the most improvement this year. What kind of work did you do over the summer, or what kind of work did you do at the beginning of this year to kind of have that change in your event lineup?
Yeah, I actually, at the beginning of the season, I was still planning on doing the 4 a.m. the whole year. But I think as the season progressed, um, I still trained for the 4 a.m. I still trained for the 500 free. But for some reason, that 200 free kept being strong throughout the year. I'd swim it at dual meets, swim it at mid-season. And it was an event that still stood out more than my 500 and 4 a.m. So as far as like outside of the pool, I was still lifting and doing dry lands and still trying to work on strength. So that definitely could have played a role in my 200 freestyle and why that has gotten better, more so opposed to my other events. But it definitely wasn't something that I planned on swimming, and it wasn't something I planned on having that big of a jump with. But as the season progressed, as I kind of felt the season as it went on, I noticed that my 200 free was strong. And come ODAC championships, I definitely expected to go fast in it. And I wasn't too surprised that I did well in the 200 opposed to my 500. So,
Yeah, I think the 500 is just a very tough event, man. I mean, I don't do it anymore, thankfully. I went to the 2IM and that was my first day event and first day jitters. Whoopee.
yeah, I might have to do the same switch going forward because at my conference championships, I always do the 500 free, but that 200 IM seems really nice now that I'm getting older. And I just feel like as my college swimming career has progressed, that I became more of a sprinter, even though I don't do any sprint training. I train for the 500, 4 a.m., and a little bit of the 200 free. But for some reason, I feel like my events are turning more into the 200 free, 200 IM. So I guess that's part of just growing old and being a college student and like lifting more, getting a little bigger. I guess that just comes along with it.
Yeah, I think also for me too, I feel like I just don't have that same kind of like endurance to just keep swimming at the same speed over and over again. I think, I mean, I still can do the mile, but it's just like it was definitely one of my hardest races at NCAA. I was struggling, man.
Mhm. Yeah, training for the 500 is definitely more difficult than training for the 200. 200 is a lot more fun to train for.
Griffin, you can probably talk a little bit about that experience of, going back and forth with the 4 a.m. to free that he talked about, because I know you had a similar experience this season.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo your sentiment, Dalton, that as you get older, you're kind of more inclined to put on muscle, and I also think that this is sort of an interesting hypothesis that I have personally. Um, is that like D3 swimming, like without the off-season training, it does kind of get hard to keep building on those longer events. I think that's kind of why we see a little bit more stagnation in like the mile and the 500 in D3 compared to like other events where, we're sort of creeping up on like D1 times, but that mile and 500 are always a little bit further. So for me personally, when I went home last summer, I had an internship like I'm sure you're going to have this summer too. And, just kind of swimming, was like a 6 day a week thing, but only for like an hour and a half a day, when I could squeeze it in still. And I just found that it was easier to sort of maintain my speed in the 200 with like lifting and things like that in the off season. And I do think there's also a lot of beneficial cross training of doing the 200, even if you're training for the 4 IM. Like you kind of made that switch this year to the 200. I think that, if you've got the endurance for the 4 IM, you've certainly got the endurance to swim, for half of that time in a 200. So definitely a switch that a lot of swimmers make. But I mean, it paid off pretty well for you going from, second team All-America, honorable mention to top 8 in that 200 was definitely the right call.
Yeah, this past season, I strictly did all 4 IM 500 free training, and my 400 IM saw like a zero point 0.1 second improvement. But I feel like I wouldn't have had as good a 200 free if I didn't have that base from that 4 IM training. So going into next year, even if I do the 200 free and choose to do the 200 free, I'm still going to train for the 4 IM and the 500 free because I'm confident that those training for those two events will help my 200 free.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. I mean, like just the aerobic base you build is just invaluable. As an IMer to an IMer, I want to ask you this. Like, when I do the IM, I always take it, look at my splits, and I go, oh my God, like which stroke do I need to like work on the most and hit the lab? And for me this season, it was my backstroke, right? I went into the backstroke with like a 100 mid backstroke split. And now my 4 IMs, if I split like 58 regularly, I think that paid off for me. Like, how do you think you can
Josh.
improve? Yeah, how do you think you can improve splitting like your IM events? Like, what do you think looking forward to the next season?
Yeah, so the way that I look at 200 IM and 400 IM in particular is I take out the 100 fly easy because I'm a really bad butterflyer. I spin my arms on backstroke and just try to keep up because I'm a really bad backstroker. So those two are my two worst strokes. So I just go through the motions, try to keep up. And then breaststroke is where I try to turn it on. I guess that's considered my best odd, um, but I'm not a breaststroker by any means. So breaststroke is strong for me. So that's when I try to make my move in my IM. And then being a freestyle, I love the freestyle leg of the IM and I just bring it home on freestyle. So I guess my biggest improvement to my IM would be those first two legs, the fly and the back leg. But in particular, I think improving my butterfly would benefit me the most because when I'm doing 4 IM, after that 100 fly, I'm gasped. And I know I really shouldn't be. So being able to take out that 400 IM or 200 IM faster without using so much energy would definitely help my IM. And that's probably the next thing I'll work on for my IM, that butterfly.
Yeah, I think it's just so weird because when I do my IM, right, like it's just so hard to like kind of like pace it, you know what I mean? Because when you're doing like a salt, you're doing like a 200 free or 200 stroke, like you can feel like, hey, like this is how I need to pace it because I'm getting like more tired here, right? But when you do the IM, like you do your fly, you switch to backstroke, and we start using those different muscle groups. You're like, oh wow, like I don't feel as tired anymore. But your aerobic base, I mean, like you're aerobically still just as tired, right?
Mhm.
So like it's just like a slippery slope for me when I get into like that backstroke leg and I hit it and I go into the breaststroke and I'm just like you. I'm like I gotta like hit the legs on the breaststroke, right? That's one of my better
Mhm.
strokes. I kick off that wall and I go, ah, crap, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm starting to feel it.
Yeah, I'm always scared to die on a 400 IM, which is, I think, part of the reason why I don't take out my fly in my back very fast is I like to make sure that I'll have enough coming home on that breast and free. So maybe just taking more risks when I swim the 4 AM and actually going out instead of just floating the first 200 might benefit me.
Right. I think just like it's just like having more experience, right? I mean, I think every time I do it in an in-season meet, I think it's like, oh, great, like I can, I could like, just like, kind of like sell this a little bit here, or I could take this as like an opportunity to practice it, right? And like, see like where my limit is at and just swim it like, to the best of my ability.
Right. Yeah, swimming 4 AM and in season definitely difficult, but definitely will help your 4 AM come paper time.
Hmm.
So I guess Dalton, sort of wrapping up. I mean, we've covered a lot about your season so far, your swimming. You got 2 more years left at Washington and Lee. So if you had to, sort of set a goal for yourself, what your legacy might look like when you leave, whether that's, sort of in the pool, out of the pool, what you hope to achieve, academically, in swimming, things like that. How would you sort of lay that out for yourself, what you're trying to build on for these next 2 years?
Yeah. Um, as far as academic goals, I mean, graduating seems pretty nice right now. I mean, not that I'm struggling in school or anything, but I have bigger goals in the pool than I do in the classroom. the pool is really where I set my big goals and I work every day to achieve. So although I am a student athlete, I sometimes like to think that I'm an athlete student. And I like to go around saying that sometimes just because I care so much about swimming. And I feel like my life is really driven from the goals I set in the water. That being said, a goal that I want to accomplish by the time I graduate is to win something at nationals, either a relay or an individual. Um, I think our relay team, the 800 free or the 400 free, definitely has a shot of winning. It's comprised of 3 sophomores, including myself, and then 1 junior. So if it doesn't happen next year, we still keep three of the relay swimmers. So we have a couple years to get that done, and that's something that I think we can accomplish. So I'm really excited to see what happens next year and the year after. And I guess that's my big goal for swimming is to win something at NCAAs.
I mean, can't really set much better of a goal than that in the realm of D3 swimming, to be honest. And that's kind of funny. I do kind of vibe with the athlete student comment sometimes because I feel like D3 is pretty well known for the we compete at a high level while still pursuing academics and stuff, and with the whole like lack of an off season, things like that, where people really tend to focus on school more. I do think that people kind of forget that there's a lot of like very passionate individuals that are still in Division 3 and spend a lot of time like perfecting their craft, and that we're not all just like total nerds that like just do swimming as like a side hustle. And I mean, yeah, I definitely think that if you guys continue on the same trajectory, there's certainly a possibility of winning a relay next year. And on that note, we always like to give our listeners the opportunity to hear who our guests have shouted out, who contributed their success this season. Any of your boys on your team, on your relay specifically, you want to shout out any of your coaches, things like that?
Yeah. Two of the people I live with currently, Thomas Denton and Harrison Cerrone. Harrison's a big breaststroker on our team. And then Thomas was one of the kids on that 800 free relay. Those two individuals definitely pushed me every day at practice. I go to and from practice with them about every day, and just having the same schedule with them, we've really had just a great bond this season. And I feel like they've pushed me to be the best individual that I can be. And then I guess two other shout outs, Charles Byers and Luke Nagel, two kids that made NCAAs for the first time this season. I feel like they have a lot in store for next season. Both of them made incredible jumps in their swimming this year. Luke Nagel went a 138.2 on that 800 free relay, which was a fantastic split for him. And then Charles Byers going to 136 at the ODAC Championships was something that no one thought he could even come close to. So those two kids have worked so hard this year, and I just know that they'll be good kids to have next year on that relay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, we're looking forward to seeing it, and I think, yeah, like you said, you guys are on a great trajectory. And if you thought that 638 was your goal this year, maybe 628 could be your goal for next year, which I think is around what it took to win this year. So we'll certainly be on the lookout for the Washington and Lee fellas coming up these next couple of years.
Yeah, always keeping an eye on that national 800 free record. It's a fast one, but one that we think will be broken pretty soon, probably next year by a team. Um, but it was a very fast record by the Emory gang.
Yeah, I feel like you do kind of think that those records are pretty lofty until like there's a couple teams that are right on the cusp of it, and then there's just like a big breakthrough. I mean, I feel like that's like kind of like the 200 medley, like in D1. Like 121 low was kind of the magical mark, and then it just like exploded to like the low 120s. These past couple of years, I think that definitely as we continue to get more recruits. I mean, I saw there's a 136 guy going to MIT in the two free. The more eyes that are on D3 swimming, I think the more people will start to creep into that low 620, mid 620 range. So definitely something I'm excited to see, and I think that you guys can throw your name in that hat. So
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, like you just said, D3 swimming, it's getting faster every year. So who knows what's in store for the next couple of years, but just having a great group of guys here to work with every day and train with. Just makes it fun, and I just look forward to what the season has in stock for next year. So
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to seeing your next season as well. Obviously, thank you for taking the time to join us on the podcast. We've loved to hear about your season and about your NCAAs, your ODACs, and certainly, we'll keep an eye on you moving forward and the rest of the Washington and Lee men's team. Thanks again, Dalton, for your time. And listeners, this has been another episode of the Anchor Leg Podcast. We'll see you next time.